Hi everyone. Hopefully you're well. Thank you very much for joining us on the latest session from PMO Learning. We're going to be doing a good one today about training needs analysis. We've had some good questions in as well, which we're hoping we'll be able to hopefully make sure that we answer those yeah, give you some really good info. I'm just going to wait until people join us. We always get, I'm always get straight into it and forget that, people are not always here on the dot. But I hope your day is going well. You will be able to see that we have meeting chat. We do meetings rather than webinars, which means that people are able to freely ask questions and chat with each other or throw in some comments, as we're going through this, or any questions. So please do feel free. I'd love to know where you're dialing in from, or are you at a desk, or are you out walking lunchtime? I've been known to do that myself, listening into webinars. So it'd be really interesting to know whether you can't see the screen and you're just listening. So yeah, just get into chat and let me know what you're up to today on this Wednesday. You'll see on the screen, training needs analysis for PMO teams, a practical approach to PMO development. I say teams, but it's also for you. Hopefully you're a team member. Even if you're a PMO of one, I still see that as a PMO team. Hopefully you do too. So what we'll do, we'll dive into it. So today's session then is going to be all around training needs analysis. And what I want to do is get into what TNA for short is all about, but also giving you PMO Learning's approach to this, so simplifying a TNA process that hopefully PMO people see the value of, see what's possible with it, and thinking about whether you can utilize that kind of thing within your own PMO. And then what I've also thought is let's have a look at the PMO assessment, because I think that's a core part of TNA, as we'll get into it shortly and see. And then I'll talk to you about just a few different examples where we've seen a TNA model being utilized within the PMO. So let's crack on. Training needs analysis. Let's just start with what it is, just so we all know we're all on the same page. It's a process that predominantly comes from HR, so the HR department, specifically probably around learning and development. So it's a process that comes out of that. But it is about identifying what it is that we have. I'm going to talk purely in PMO terms, what we have within our PMO in terms of its skills, its abilities, the things that we can carry out, and where we need to be doing more in terms of our capability. And a training needs analysis is a kind of a process that allows you to give, and you like the word because we always like this in PMOs, a little bit more control around the whole process, rather than it being, oh, I think I need to get some development in this area. It's more about thinking, there is a process for this. It's well embedded within the HR and L&D good practices. So we can utilize it. And I think it's because we're also PMO people in a pretty unique position, in that we can think about training needs analysis from our own PMO and our people within it and yourself. But if you think about some of the roles that some PMOs do, which is about thinking about the wider capability of people that are delivering in the organization as well. So that's everybody across the whole kind of project management space. Some PMOs also take responsibilities in that area too. So it can be used with two different hats on. So it's a process which is all about trying to identify what people have, where we need to be, and where those gaps might be, and what we want to do about them in a controlled way, in a process-driven way. And understanding that the gaps that are existing between the skills each team currently has and the skills that are basically required by our organization, or it could be a specific project or the work that we're doing within the PMO. Yeah, so training needs analysis is a process that just allows us to put a little bit more control, a little bit more thought processes around this. When we were asking you to register, we asked, what is it that you're interested in? What is it that you're looking for? So for some of you, it was about just trying to understand a little bit more about what it is and how you might be able to utilize it. There were some specific comments rather than questions. We're saying that you do have some current capability issues in the team, and what you want to, be able to understand that and how you can plan to address them. Perhaps about the right time to be able to do an assessment, and when you're building a team, or is it when you've had a team around for a while. People just interested in, I've taken on a new I've been working within a PMO. The PMO is different to the one that I'm used to before, which you see a lot. PMOs can be very different as you move from organization to organization. So again, hopefully it's running through all of that is just wanting to be able to understand more about how we can do this with a more business-driven process. But also remembering at the heart of all of this is around development and getting better at what it is that we do, whether we're working within the PMO or we're managing it, or indeed responsible for capability across the delivery organization. So the interesting thing is, well, why do we need this? Why do we need a little bit more control? Well, I think we find that, PMOs are being asked to do a lot more with fewer resources. I think we can all agree with that. And we need to make sure that if we are in that position, that everybody within our team is operating at their highest level of value that they're bringing to the PMO service that they're offering. We're increasingly seeing that PMOs are moving away from that kind of admin only. I'd love to know whether you agree with that statement too. But I think being able to and being asked to do more with fewer resources means that there's going to be some development. We're seeing that skills are often evolving faster than the roles that we're actually performing. We've got to be able to keep pace with the role that we're doing, but sometimes we find that the role that we are doing as a PMO, whether it's an analyst and an admin, a manager, we're doing more than what's on paper. And again, I'd love to know whether you even have a copy of a job profile or a job description that you're working to. But often you'll find that those things will be out of date just because of the sheer nature of the role and how project delivery changes and how PMOs are changing to be able to cope with that. Capability gaps in anybody does reduce confidence in themselves, but have we thought about the fact that if we as a PMO have capability gaps that are not being addressed and are not meeting the needs of the people that we're supposed to be supporting, they're going to lose confidence in us, which is a big problem. And I think from what we do find, we do hear about PMOs that do get shut down, get disbanded, because of things like this. So we need to make sure that we, capability gaps, whatever they might be, we are getting addressed and are doing so in a way that makes sense to the business. And of course, is that alignment, the alignment to business priorities, making sure that we're utilizing a business-driven process here, by the way. This is not something that the PMO has created. This is coming out of the HR and learning development departments anyway. And it's showing that we can utilize this approach, which is already, approved by the business, in order to be able to improve our PMOs as well as capability within the project departments as well. So it's not just about skills gap. One of the bigger things is about that strategic alignment of the PMO within the organization. And I think it's one of the things that is high up on a lot of people's agendas, just because of the, I suppose, pure nature of where we might be. Certainly here in the UK economy at the moment, that there are people that are, getting a little bit concerned about, is our PMO still fit for purpose, all of that kind of stuff. Not to scaremong, but it is one of the things that we have to think about in terms of, are we aligned with what our business wants and needs right now and its future plans? So getting that alignment, here's the tool that is going to allow us to do that. So just while we're into training needs analysis, there are actually 3 different kinds. There's organization, team, and individual. And today's session is really much focused on the team and the individual. So if you were to go away and do some research and have a look deeper into the subject of TNA, you will see different types. But essentially today we're looking at the team, so that's examining the PMO and also the people within the team. Okay, so why does a PMO need a TNA? Well, we've kind of talked about some of them, but essentially we're wanting to do and take development seriously, and we're wanting our organizations to believe and to take seriously the development of the PMO. Yeah, so you'll hear that term a lot about the growth mindset, about how everyone within the organization, we want people to be thinking about continuous learning. And PMOs are no exception. And you certainly look at what the landscape's been like over the last 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, we can talk about things like we've got the whole agile and hybrid method approaches. We've got the kind of rise of data. We've got now the kind of AI stuff coming in. We know that there are always going to be things that we have to continuously improve around. So this again is about taking this kind of stuff seriously. The gaps, that stands to reason, and we're going to absolutely talk about that today. A good thing around the TNA and this process is about consistency, and it's something that perhaps many people have not really thought about before, but we have certainly seen it in our work here at PMO Learning, how much of a difference it makes when the PMO team is being developed as a group rather than just thinking purely as individuals. And again, that consistency in people being developed together, that their whole knowledge, their processes, their skills, their behaviors are all in line with what is required within our particular PMO. And having a way to be able to do that has been really important for some organizations. We've talked about the alignment, which is about getting that right kind of training with the right people. I'm sure some of you in your working time will have seen time and time again how some training comes, but it's not necessarily the right stuff for you, but it's been mandated. I mean, I'm going back a little bit in my career, but Prince 2 always seemed to be the flavor of the month, and everybody was what we called sheep dipped. But was it the right kind of thing for everybody to be doing? Quite possibly not. Cherry on the cake is that we mentioned before that the PMO is not only involved in thinking about our own development, but we may have that role where we're putting this kind of thing in place across the whole of a delivery organization. We have got to lead by example, which is about being an exemplar in a lot of the things that we're advocating. We need to be showing that we are, what do they call it? I hate the phrase, but I'm going to say it anyway, that we're eating our own dog food. Some other ones that just pops up that I can't put on this nice diagram of this man with cherries on his head, but I think a lot of this stuff as well is giving confidence. It's giving people, and remembering that people are at the heart of this, is that people really do want to know what good looks like. People do want to know what is required from the business. What is it that the business needs from them, and how to get there. I think people really do want that, and to see that stuff to be translucent and visible within the organization. And we've also got the right training for the right people again, but thinking specifically around PMOs, that it's role specific, it's targeted, and it's relevant. Again, we see off time and time again where some of the precious training budget gets wasted because it's not going into the right kind of level or right focus specifically around PMO. And we're going to be going into how we can be making that better. And then ultimately is about being able to show that we can clearly articulate the need, and that we can also demonstrate what the expected benefits are from some of this stuff. So it's not just a case of we're doing this development because this feels like the right thing to do. Feeling the right thing to do is no good anymore. It's about being able to choose selectively what it is that we're going to do, carry it out, and then be able to understand what the returns have been on that investment, just like any other kind of business process. So from a PMO point of view, then you're listening to PMO Learning, which is focused purely on PMO development, learning, knowledge, skills, all of that kind of good stuff. If you're working within PMO, you couldn't find a better partner to be able to do this kind of stuff with. But what we've found over the years, and we've been going for 7 years now, and through that time, I had a lot of people that are taking public training courses, which you'll see on the website. That any course that we do, you can just, as an individual, book on them. But we've also seen over that time where organizations are coming to us that are wanting to do more of maybe a team approach to doing some development, which was got us thinking more about what process are they going through, and wouldn't it be really interesting if we could put this into align it with something like TNA, but then just make it more of a PMO focus, so people within PMO totally get it. So we came up with this product because organizations may want to speak to us are thinking about this. These are the steps that you need to be thinking about in order to be able to do the right kind of development at the right time, being able to get budgets signed off, being able to show and demonstrate that it's the right development, and so on. So this is a really simple 5-step process. I think if you look at TNA from HR departments and things, I think it goes up to about 8 or 9, sometimes 10. But we made it simple because simple is always best. So this is the process. So what we want to do is just take you through now what those some of the steps are. Just hopefully might spark some thoughts in yourself, give you some insights, and then I'll talk to you about some of the examples that we've actually seen as well, to put it into some context. So one of the things that many people will skip will probably go over to point 3 straight away. Most organizations, when you're thinking about development, might pull out a development plan. They might do a performance review, but actually there are steps before that that are really important into the process, that's going to make these steps 3, 4, and 5 so much better, so much more valuable. So rather than just jumping straight into it, we've got to think about the goals. And here, for thinking about the PMO specifically, is about the desired outcome. And this can be, regardless of where you're working within the PMO. If you're here now as a team member as opposed to the manager, absolutely fine. You can be thinking about how you can influence around this in terms of thinking about the conversations that you might have, which is what is the desired outcome for the PMO. Do you know that? We talk a lot about, you have a mandate for the PMO, this is what it's here to do. But actually, from a people point of view, do we think about this kind of stuff? What is the desired outcome for the current PMO and the people within it? What is it that we need? What is it that we're looking for? What will success look like? When we think about setting goals, we'll be thinking about that alignment to an organization's strategy. And I know some of the things that we've been listening to and been involved in recently, the number of people that will say, well, actually, I don't even know what the organization's strategy is. And in some cases, there isn't one. But, as it be, it's, what is the organization's strategy? It's the organization as a whole, or a project department, as it were. And then thinking again about the PMO's own strategic objectives and visions. So do we have those kind of things in place about what it is, what's the outcome, and what is it that we'll know when we're starting to get somewhere in terms of our end vision, our goals, whatever it might be. You also think about some from an alignment to the organization strategy, that it might be something like an eye level of improvement that might be required. So for example, we've certainly seen over the last 7, 8 years or so, organization strategy might be adopting an agile focused approach to the way that it delivers change. I don't know if you've come into that kind of environment or been in that kind of, but this is an example. If our organization strategy is to think about how we want to change delivery, is a PMO going to be ready for that kind of thing? And obviously our development is going to be focused around being able to support that high level strategic objective. What about for the PMO, the goal setting for the PMO? So what about some of the areas in which we currently support? What about some of the service areas that we currently don't, but we know we need to, because our organization needs this? For example, new processes around benefits management, or perhaps it's a new project kind of data service, analytics type service. I've certainly been having conversations and exchange and understanding how many other people are starting to get into things like project data and getting better at their dashboarding skills, looking at Power BI, all of those kind of things. So again, what is the goal setting at the PMO level? And then when it comes to the individual level, there's a combination of what we need as a team in terms of the support of the delivery and the PMO services, but also the individual personalized goals that people want and need too. You know, we can't ignore an individual does, you know, want to do certain things as well. And that's the thing that we've got to try and balance off. So for individuals, it might be a specific skill or behavior, or something that's a stretch, something where they're thinking about they want to be in the next year or so and starting to put some steps in place. So goals are the bits where, yeah, might be a little bit of head scratching, might be a bit of research, might be going and talking to a few different stakeholders within the business, might be a conversation within PMO itself, the people that are working within it, all of those kind of things. But it's the goals that, you know, underlie exactly what it is that we're going to be doing as we move forward into looking at development. So one of the things that we obviously advocate is assessment. Wouldn't it be lovely if you could assess somebody who's working within the PMO to understand, well, what it is that they've got right now? Because when we understand what people have, we might be able to then understand some gaps and then take that on to the next level. If we can do that with individuals, what could we do if we've got a PMO team? So we'll have a collection of individual assessments that can give us more of a team profile. But it does exist, thankfully, and came available in 2021. Don't know how many of you are familiar with the House of PMO, the sister company to PMO Learning. Both Eileen and I run both PMO Learning and House of PMO. House of PMO is a membership-based organisation for people working within PMOs. But what came out of that in 2021 is a project that we've been running for about 3 years, because this had always been a problem. So if we're trying to understand how PMOs people can be developed and do development, it stands to reason that people want to be able to understand, well, what is it that I've got? How do I even know that the things that I'm doing within my organization and their PMO and their style of PMO and the way that we do projects, how does that even stack up with how it might be done down the street in a different organization? And it always bothered me. And I'd always heard about how many different PMO managers were trying to do this internally and taking months, in some cases years, to be able to produce something like it. Now, a PMO competency framework, what it does, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail with them, is looks at competencies. Now, competencies are about how you can do your job. Yeah, so it's how competent you are at doing certain aspects of your job. So when it comes to thinking about the PMO, we have got things that that we're doing day in, day out, things that we are doing for delivery and supporting delivery, things that we're doing within the PMO, things that we're doing for ourselves that we're collectively working together in the PMO to create. Some of those might be managing PMOs, some of those may be new into the PMO. There's so many different things to think about in terms of competence. So these competence, essentially, top left, everybody understands administration. We've all got it, regardless of the role that we're doing. Top right, PMO managers are focused around, you know, this PMO management competencies around designing PMOs, setting them up, running them, transforming them, and closing them. For a lot of people, bottom left, you'll recognize it. P3M stands for Project Program Portfolio. And delivery support are the classic areas, which you'll see that big list there, of where a PMO may be supporting projects, programs, and portfolios. And those are the areas in which they'll be doing that. Some of those things you'll look at and say, yeah, I do a lot of that. Some of them I don't do any. Absolutely fine. But these are the core competence areas that people working within PMO, regardless of what levels, will have some ability in. This one on the bottom right, P3M enabling, is the kind of things that PMOs are doing that transcend across all projects, programs, portfolios. So for example, with delivery methods, we put forward and put in place delivery methods that all projects might be using or all the programs are using. When we put in place tools, it generally tends to be tools that everybody's using, regardless of what project that they're working on. It's the same goes with things like assurance, capacity development, and governance frameworks. And you'll see that one there that's capability development is the point that I was making before about how sometimes a PMO is taking responsibility for ensuring capability is being developed and improved across the entirety of that project delivery department. So we have the ability to do an assessment against some of the core things that PMO people do. Before this, the only nearest thing you could probably use was a project manager competency assessment. And a lot of us did. And I certainly remember doing it and getting really frustrated that I could do an assessment on my knowledge of it, so the knowledge of delivering projects, but I couldn't do the assessment around the actual practicalities because I'm not a project manager. So what this framework has allowed people to do is an assessment against the actual jobs that they're doing in these core competency areas. And it doesn't matter what role you're at, whether you're new into PMO, or you're somebody who's been around the block as a PMO director. It also doesn't matter what kind of PMO you're working with in either. So projects, programs, portfolios, and center of excellence, as they're all covered. The other thing that's really important about this is the ability to assess against knowledge, skills, and behaviors, because competencies are not that. For example, you need knowledge to underpin some of the things that you're doing competence-wise. So for example, I'm doing benefits management as a PMO service. I might be doing it for a project, singular project, or multiple projects, whatever it might be. But you'll have underpinning knowledge that allows you to be able to do that job. And the underpinning knowledge in this case might be that you understand the benefits management. You know, there's two courses. There's managing benefits, and then we've also got our own specialist course in that one as well, which is benefits management in the PMO. So you've got some underpinning knowledge that allows you to be able to be competent at the role that you're performing. And for a lot of us, the knowledge is gained through, we might do a formal training course to understand, you know, we might do for the benefits one, or we might want to do, say, portfolio management, there's courses for that. But we might also get our knowledge from, you know, reading, from getting involved in webinars, going to conferences, all manner of different places. But it's the knowledge that underpins our ability to be competent in the role that we're doing. So knowledge is something else that we want to be able to surely assess against. Then we've got skills, because skills are the things that we are actually going to be doing in order to be able to be competent in the role and putting our knowledge into practice. So those are the things where you'll be, you know, doing the analysis, communicating with others, influencing others, carrying out and doing things like forecasting. These are just a subsection, by the way. You know, there's a bigger section of them in the assessment itself. And then finally, to be truly competent, to be truly good at what you're doing, is to look at some of the behaviors that underpin what we're doing. You could be knocking it out of the park in terms of competence level, knowledge and skills. But if the behaviors are not in line with, you know, some of these that you're seeing on the screen here, it impedes the ability to be able to do the job well, to be able to work with others, to be able to challenge and push back, you know, all of those kind of things that you think about, or maybe you don't think about them in what you're doing on a day-to-day basis at work. Do you even recognize what behaviors are? Because it took me a while to understand and get my head around this, but behaviors are what people see. So if you were standing in front of me, or if I observed you at work, behaviors are the things that I will be able to physically see. So they're not values, you know, they're not things that are, you know, in the kind of underpin internally in you. These are things that we would actually see in the workplace. So important, and also really important to be able to understand, you know, am I got things in place that are allowing me to be able to do this kind of stuff too. So when we look at assessment of levels, what we're ultimately trying to do is work out where we might be in terms of some of the proficiency levels, are what they're called. So within the competency framework, there's 4 levels, which you can see on the screen right now. And essentially what happens when you do an assessment, you'll be looking at, and the bullet points that come underneath it give you an idea about the kinds of things that you will be doing in order to be able to assess what level that you're at. And generally, it goes up, obviously, but it's not about just seniority. It isn't a case of you're a PMO director, therefore you'll be scoring expert at everything, because you wouldn't be. Because actually what happens over time, as your role changes, you stop doing some things because there's other people in the team that do that. You're not doing that anymore, and therefore, why would you be an expert in that area? So things change, and I think increasing through the proficiency levels come from different places, different ways of doing things. It might come over time. I'm doing a benefits management service. I've been doing it for a number of years. Chances are that you're definitely at the intermediate and perhaps the advanced level, maybe even the expert, because a period of time has taken place. However, might not be, because you might just be doing the same thing day in, day out. There might be no thought process into how you can make some improvements, how you can influence people to do benefits better within the business. So there's a number of different ways how people are moving through the different kind of proficiency levels. So what we tend to find, yes, with people first starting within a PMO, so if I imagine you've got a team member that's coming in that could be a kind of PMO administrator, it stands to reason that a lot of the stuff they may be doing is foundation. Not necessarily. It depends on which competency area that they're assessing themselves in. Because if you think about it, a PMO administrator could be getting up to the advanced level in the administration competence. Could be, really low scoring in different areas, but that's what I mean. It's a really interesting way to start thinking about, that here I am as a PMO professional, but actually I don't really know where I would be in this kind of assessment. I know what I know, but I'm not sure how I'm going to do a comparison against a standard, which is what the competency framework is. I wanted to do a quick demo, but what I want to do, I want to see if I've got the time to do it, because I think what I'm probably more likely to want to do is to go into more detail with doing it rather than doing you a quick demo, because I've got other things that I want to get into this in terms of the kind of the process. But the tool is available online, and it's available for House of PMO members. So you become an individual member, you can have access to it, and you can do your self-assessment. Or alternatively, you can just buy the book and you can do the assessment yourself in the back. So if you're listening to this today and wanting to, I'm really interested in knowing more about this, head over to House of PMO and have a look at that in terms of the areas on the website that go into it into more detail. But what I want to do is just think about, assessments and what it is that they're doing in terms of the 4 core roles that are in there. So we have, within the competency framework, the PMO administrator role. And if we're thinking about development and assessment, we think about, well, what is it that people are wanting to do at certain levels within the PMO? So for an administrator, for example, is it about wanting more responsibility and development that will mean that they will get that more responsibility over time? Do you want to try different types of work which they've currently not had the opportunity to do? Or do they want to administer on bigger, larger, more complex projects? Those are some of the development type opportunities that might be available to us. But what about the analysts? Well, they maybe want to become more specialized. And we do see that, again, large programs. You find that some of the analyst roles do get more specialized, like things like benefits or reporting or finance or governance. They might want to work in different types of PMOs. Yeah, we've talked at there's projects, there's programs, there's portfolios, there's center of excellence, there's VMOs, there's all sorts of stuff going on in different types of PMOs. Or they might want to become a manager and thinking about their development in that area. From a PMO manager point of view, and again, these are all the common roles we see in the competency framework, is moving into maybe a more portfolio level type PMO. So it could have been managing at project program type level. Now I want to be moving up the chain into a portfolio. Or maybe it's a bigger PMO, something with more people on it that makes the complexity more complicated. Or maybe it's about putting PMOs in place. Again, and we've always found that you've been two camps of PMO managers, the ones that really love running them, improving them, and you've got the ones that love setting them up and then leaving that to somebody else to manage it going forward. And then what about the senior roles? Well, what about them? So for people that are working at or wanting to work at a director level role, is making that move and that shift because it becomes more business focused, more strategic in nature. But you're getting into that kind of ePMO type level where it's, you know, PMOs right across the organization. So a lot more complex in terms of what it is that they're doing. And then for a personal point of view, maybe they're wanting to become a bit more of a thought leader in the area, sharing what it is that they've done over their vast careers. It's really interesting when we start to think about PMO development. And we think about, well, who am I? What job am I doing? Or what kind of development am I thinking of? And these are some of the things that we see predominantly for PMO people. What we've also got then with the competency framework, and I said, wouldn't it be lovely if you could see where you might have some strengths, where you might have some gaps? And this does allow you to do that kind of thing. So here at PMO Learning, you know, we're able to facilitate that if you're wanting to go down the route of actually utilizing the tool online, we can do that as part of the PMO TNA process. What you're seeing on screen right now is an individual assessment. It gives you lots of, and spits out lots of different types of lovely diagrams, but you know, the simple ones are often the best, and the spider diagram just kind of gives the highlight here. And what you're seeing on screen is a PMO analyst, but it's done an assessment because they're working at a predominantly supporting project level. So that's why you can see you've got the competence areas. So they're right at the top, PMO 04. Benefits and value management is a competence. The project in brackets is the context in which they're doing their assessment. And what you're seeing here is the current level, is that blue shading, is their assessment. And you can see pretty quickly where they're going, exceeding what the requirements are, or the best practice guidance is, and where there might be some gaps. So you can see with the ticks that they're bang on, you've got some stars where they're like performing or assessing higher, and then we've got those gaps which are the red little warning signs. That black line there is what's been set by House of PMO in the competency framework, is to see what would actually be the level that you would be required to be performing at to be classed to be competent as a PMO analyst working at the project level. So we can see here we've got some gaps around planning and knowledge management, which we might want to be thinking about addressing. But what about the team? So again, what we're looking at is, what about our team approach? So on this one, we can see, again, it's PMO analysts, and there's 3 of them in the team. We're working again at a project level. This is showing us where we may have a team gap or team strengths. And do we even know that? Which is what the really interesting thing is about this half the time. Do we actually even know that we have some strengths in some areas that we otherwise wouldn't know because we've not done this kind of analysis? This kind of thing is going to be showing us, and now you can see why the goals become important, because we can see some gaps, but are the gaps important? The gaps, can we align that back to what's important right now? Because we'll have gaps, but we've got to think about prioritization, which of course PMO people know all about, that we can't be closing gaps left, right, and center, because actually some of those gaps don't even need closing. So again, we've got to be thinking about what this is showing us and how it aligns to our goals. Yeah, so we've got our goals and we've got our assessments, and now we've got to start thinking about, well, what is it we want to do as an individual and at our team levels? If our organization is wanting us to do more around agile-led change delivery, we might have to have a look at that one, which is PMO 22, which is kind of like bottom right, delivery methods. Do we have the capability within the team to be making switches to some of the delivery method that we're utilizing on the project? It's time for a conversation, and it's trying to understand exactly what might be going on here and what we want to do with this. So with analysis, again, just a stylized version, we want to assess against the right levels. Yeah, so we want to know exactly where we might have some issues. We might already know where we've got some issues, and we want to be able to, analyze that and get the data for it to show that it is a thing, which then we can think about how do we get the funding to be able to close those gaps, all of that kind of stuff. Here we can be thinking about how we set the right levels. For some of these, that black line, as we said, is set by the House of PMO. But for some organizations, you can say, well, actually, when we're doing the reporting, we need to be expert levels on this for whatever reason. Then we've got to be able to identify the gaps. But we've also got to remember that we've got strengths that we want to capitalize on and get better and not get complacent about. Because remember, we know that things keep changing. There's always new stuff coming up that we've got to be thinking about, and are we still fit for purpose? And again, being able to see that team profile. Now, I just want to stop for a second because I want a sip of my tea. So I thought, and being incredibly nosy, I would like to know exactly what development things might be going on for you right now. So I'm going to put a poll on the page, and hopefully you'll be able to have a go at it. Now you can answer as many of these as you want, but I'd just really love to know what your biggest development gap is in your PMO team right now. As many as you want. And there are a few. So if you're not seeing all of them on screen, because I've got to scroll up and down on mine, but if you can just pop some in there, I'm just really intrigued to know right now if you know where there might be some development gaps, plus I get to have a cup of tea. I love this. It's like, do you know what do you reckon? What do you reckon is going to come out the top? It's fascinating, this stuff. I will share it with you. But some of this I'm not really surprised at. You'll be glad to know that there's like all of them have been ticked. Oh no, loads of development to do. Thanks for doing that. Let me share the results. There you go. Yeah, all of them. To some degree. So benefits. How many times do we hear this? Benefits management is a real tricky one, which is why we created the course. And if you're not familiar with the course, go and have a look at it. We have got one coming up. You may have put it in chat already. I'm not keeping an eye on it. I've got too many things going on. But yeah, benefits management and reporting and insights and analysis. Absolutely. Certainly right now with everything that's going on in terms of data and advances and things like that. So good. Yeah, thank you for that. And a nice cup of tea too. All right, so onwards then. The bit where we normally jump in is development plans, which is an action plan. We have done a session on this before, and it is available if you want to go and have a look at this in more detail. I don't want to rehash over some of the stuff we've already done, but in terms of this, in this context, thinking about the entire process from 1 to 5, development plans then tend to be the area where we'll take our insights. We know what our goals are. We've done the assessments. We've got some ideas about the individual and also the team in terms of where there might be some development. We've then got to think about a development plan. Incidentally, with the online assessment tool, this is already in there as well. So you can also do one online as part of, you can do your assessment and then skip over into the same part of the portal and do your development plan. But PMO Learning does have a template, which is, again, we've already done a session on this before. and it is on the news and blog part. So Jen will be able to stick that into chat if you want to go into more detail with this, because this one, when we did it, I think we've done it a few months ago. I've been really surprised at how many people have come to me and said, oh, we've pulled it, we've been using it. And we've done the assessment, and we've now on to this bit. So they're coming with us on the journey, but being able to do it themselves. For some organizations, it's not possible. You know, I think certainly doing the assessment part of it, which is why the PMO TNA product that we have is allowing people to do the entirety of it. But here's a development plan. And again, getting people to think about not only from an individual point of view, but also from a team point of view. So there is something there already if you want to delve deeper into this area. But the really important bits here is that link back. If we've got a goal, we know that, and we've got a business need, we know that the actions that we're going to do are going to be aligned. We've got more likely to be able to get that precious training budget or precious time to be able to do some of the development that we've identified, because it's not always about training courses, even though that's what it is that we do. So I do want to talk about that, which is obviously development, because it can come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. And it isn't just about, you know, being able to have training budget spend. And when that kind of thing becomes, you know, under pressure, that, oh, we haven't got the budget for this or that, there are lots of other ways in which we can do that kind of development. You know, so we've got classroom training and there's workshops and things like this today, different webinars. We've got a new Kids on the Block, which, you know, AI doing really well at being able to be the kind of, is it the new YouTube in terms about being able to approach certain things that you may not know. Good sessions out there in terms of being able to train your AI in being maybe a course instructor, all of that kind of good stuff. Interesting things going on. But in terms of training development, when you're looking at the TNA, what we've often found is, because PMOs are different and because businesses have, you know, they're very, you know, a certain context, we found that actually doing projects and doing training off the shelf, trying to find the right kind of things that are going to work, not just for individuals but for a team. If you remember right at the beginning, we said about consistency. One of the biggest things that people have done this is because they need to bring their PMO together. They need to be all on the same page, but everybody needs to be singing from the same hymn sheet. How many more, you know, metaphors can I have? But this is what's been really, really interesting for us, in that, you know, you can go and sit on one training course, but actually we want all the team to be able to be doing and saying the right kind of thing. And one of the things that you advocate in terms of training needs analysis, and one of the HR steps of it, is that you find experts. So if you want anybody to be able to pinpoint some of the tricky development that's required, find an expert, and that will be us if it's PMO. Yeah, so just a quick one, just on us, is that we'll do virtual classroom in-house, and we do tailor-made type things as well, which are spinning out of the PMO TNA stuff. Yeah, so think of us when you're thinking and trying to get some specific development for individuals or teams. So we've had just some examples then. So I've talked about one of them, which was wanting an in-house certification course. And if I remember correctly, it was one of the essentials. So that's the House of PMO Essentials, where they wanted the whole team to be done at the same time, not just for the knowledge, but because of that ability to be able to all be coming out of that training with the underpinning, with the consistency and the messages that they were going to be taken back into their work, and how they were going to integrate and talk with the people that they're supporting within the delivery organization. The other thing there is that also it was chosen because it was a great opportunity to bring everybody together. And if you remember, I think there's about 12 people, you know, and having the opportunity to learn together for 3 days is pretty priceless. You know, when we consider the jobs that we're doing and we're all supporting project, for the PMO to be able to come together and to learn together. I can imagine, I know Eileen's on the call, but I imagine the room itself for 3 days was pretty lively with all the kind of practical things that they were also talking about and the help that they needed. We've done in-house specialist courses. So the benefits one, again, you've just demonstrated that it is very, very tricky. We have done that a number of different times, and not just to the PMO people either. It has been a really good one for PMO to do alongside people within delivery that need to know more about benefits management, but don't want to go and do the full-blown managing benefits course, because that tends to be for people that are either program level kind of managers or benefits management specialists, and actually it goes quite deep. Our specialist course is the right level for many people, not just a PMO, but again, done that in many different types of organization and still continue to do so. And then we've had a package of learning, which is about being able to do that PMO TNA over and over again, because you've got this final piece that I want to talk about, which is the evaluate. So one of the evaluation bits, and one of the bits that comes out of the HR approach, is that you tend to do a cost analysis process, part of the process, which we've not got set out in the 5, but it's there because actually this is a bit where you're starting to not only think about cost considerations of what goes into development, but this is also about thinking about the returns. So we talked about, you know, analysis. We want to be able to show the benefit of if we put in development in place. And a lot of it comes from numbers, of which cost is one of them. So it makes sense that we will be looking at and thinking about the analysis in relation to what our cost outlays might have been. Yeah. So again, we think about cost analysis as part of, you know, when we're thinking about what we're going to be, you know, what courses we might want to do or what kind of development we want to do. Cost will be a large consideration. And what you're seeing on the screen now is just giving you some of the kind of examples that are aligned with cost in terms of return, because that is going to be one of the core and bits of analysis that you'll do. But when we've done work where it's been a package of learning, this has been very much part of that, because there's the ability to implement it and then you've got to evaluate it. And it tends to be done in 3 different ways, which is regrouping, review, and refine. And regrouping is, as it probably you can imagine, is about coming back together after you've worked out, well, this is the analysis, this is where we need to be with the team, this is the kind of development needs to happen. We need to come back and review those training outcomes to see whether actually it has been the right kind of thing to do. That's the bit about the kind of feedback and getting the experiences that from people of what it is that they've actually done, what worked well, what didn't. And then thinking review is about that effectiveness of training against what the initial goals were. Did we meet it? Did we have the metrics? Can we prove that? And then finally, we've got, you know, that refining, because when we're working with organizations over a longer period of time, which we're doing, you know, we're working with them through the TNA, not only giving them some of the development opportunities through the training courses and in-house development and all that kind of good stuff, is that we're also running a process and in the right kind of position to be able to refine, and which is what we're doing over time. But again, you know, this is about PMO learning and what we're offering to the marketplace. But hopefully today you may have taken some things away that you think, actually, you know, maybe we can start doing some baby step stuff on this and doing some of this ourselves. The key takeaways is that TNA, you know, it provides clarity on skills, knowledge, competence, you know, the full works, and that we want to get away from the guesswork. We want to be able to align it with what the business actually really needs. You know, but it is about being able to, you know, give people skills, but it is also about competency and capability improvement and all of that kind of good stuff. Being smarter at targeting the right kind of investment has got to be one of the, you know, a strong business need, and making sure that when we get that precious training budget, that we're spending it in the right place. But again, it's not just about training budgets. It is about being able to carve out time for people. You know, you've seen from the different kinds of developments available, but some of it doesn't have a cost, you know. So most of it might be about time. So it is about having a practical tool, a framework, a business framework that allows the PMO to be able to look at its development rather than, you know, in a considered, measured, targeted way, one which a business will understand, you know, and that's the best shot that we can give it, is it not? That we're talking in the way that the business talks, understands. And that's always been a battle for us in project management world, where we get into acronyms and whatever. And then she says there's a 3-letter acronym right there. But hopefully today's just given you a few ideas. If you do want to talk to us further about some of the aspects of it, please do get in touch. But I think that's it for today in terms of today's session. I've got about 4 minutes left, and I've not seen any questions. Sorry, I'm kind of keeping my eye on lots of different screens, but I'm sure the team have been answering questions as we've been going along. One of the main questions we often get asked is, will I be able to see this again? Yes, you will. It becomes available on the website. In order to be able to receive that, please do make sure you're signed up as part of our comms. We send out really good newsletters each week. This will be one of them that you will get. But if you're into PMO, you're into developing yourself, and why would you not be? Please do make sure that you're on that newsletter distribution list, and I'm sure you put a link into there already. Please do join us at the next session that we're running. Which Eileen, if you're there and you can come off mute, I've got a second.
There you go. I am.
There you go. What's your lunch and learn about next time?
So the next lunch and learn is about developing a PMO roadmap. So how do you not just you talked about developing the people, I'm going to be talking about developing the services that we provide and improving the outcomes that we deliver for our organizations.
Right, lovely. How would you not miss that? So you can just head over to the website now. You'll be able to see it's under can't remember the title. Do you know, I think you'd have this in my head. It's on the top level bar. You'll be able to see that webinar, and you can sign up now for that, so you don't forget. But we will be in touch with you because we've got your details now. So, you know, we'll be in touch with you and letting you know when this one's out, and then we'll let you know when the next one's available. So I think that's it for today. Hopefully you did a lunch and you learned. Hopefully. All right, take care. We'll see you later. Thank you. Bye.